day, happy day, happy day. So a lot of you guys don't like how your face looks, so I see you got your screenshots there. Let's go with Matt Starzyk. Can you hear me, Matt Starzyk?
Yes, sir.
That's all I needed. If Matt can hear me, everybody can hear me. So guys, we're going to give it about 30 more seconds before we begin. I could not be more excited about today's call. So who wants to ask me why?
I'll ask you why, Steve.
Good. So Brad, let me tell you why. As of tomorrow, nationwide, the NAR becomes in effect. Yes, pretty much
Yes.
as of Saturday morning. My son and his wonderful girlfriend are buying a house on Friday, and we were told, quote unquote, we have to close it tomorrow because after tomorrow we have to completely change the whole contract and the paperwork, because the contract and the paperwork has a co-broke in it, and as of the 17th, the MLS can't have a co-broke in it. So as of Saturday, the chasm between the haves and the have-nots is about to get real large. And I'm here today to help us become the haves. Because what we do know is that as of tomorrow, or really tomorrow night, the world as we know it in real estate is going to make us so much more money if we know what we're doing. And if we don't, we will sell ourselves right out of real estate in the next 90 days. So if on my screen, three down from me is a wonderful girl named Kelly. Hi, Kelly. And Kelly has a huge advantage over all of you. Number one, I know her personally because we worked at the same company for years. Number two, she sends me gifts for these calls. I mean, I got chocolates and I got 3 beautiful baskets of fruit, and they are so good. So I like Kelly more than anybody else on this call. All right, guys, let's begin. You may or may not have heard, but the NAR is making some changes as of August 17th, and in many places they've already made changes in your area. We're not going to talk about the changes. I want to talk about how we're going to make money with the changes. See, we can talk about the law and the realtor aspect of it, and you'll fall asleep because I fall asleep reading about how we have to do. Hey, Carla Faye, how are you? Carla Faye is a wonderful agent. If you have any referrals to Memphis and you don't send them to her, you're wasting your money. She's in Memphis, Tennessee, one of the greatest agents ever. So, guys, if you're reading about the NAR settlement and you're looking at it from how do you legally cover your ass, good for you. But that's not today's call. I'm not going to teach you anything that's illegal. I'm going to teach us how to make money with the changes. So number one, and this is admin lies, you have to get a buyer agency signed with the buyer when you show them a house. Yeah, everybody know that?
Mm-hmm.
For those of you who've been in real estate more than a decade, way back 10, 15 years ago, every state then required that you get agency disclosures when you signed, so the buyer knew who they were paying and who was paying your fee. And in the state of Virginia, it was a crime not to get it signed. Not a board regulation. It was an actual law, LAW. Like the police come to your house to tell you, you got to show up in front of a judge because you didn't do agency disclosure. Not a civil matter, criminal. Wasn't a big deal. We all got them signed, or some of us didn't and took the risk. Some of us speed and don't get caught. The buyers are going to have to sign it. They don't have an option. We have to be able to sell why we're their best option. That's what today's call is. So let's go to the easy part. Hello, Andy. How are you? Andrew McDermott. Hello, Andrew.
Oh, sir.
I want to see your listing. I'll meet you at the house today. For you to bring me in the house as of Saturday, do I have to sign a buyer agency?
Yes, you do.
So, Andrew, here's the issue. Why would I sign a buyer agency with you for 6 months if I only want to see a house today, one time.
It's because a new ruling, and the other benefit is you have the benefit of working with me and finding out all the new opportunities that are
Right.
out there, and I,
But you understand, Andrew, you have 30 seconds at the front door to get me to sign a buyer agency. And the smart thing to do is if you can't convince the buyer is you make them sign a one-time showing buyer agency. So you're paid on that house and protected. Yes.
yes,
Because if you play too heavy, Andrew, I'll go, wait a second. I'm going to call Kelly Nichols because I heard Kelly Nichols is great. She might buy me a fruit basket. I'll go see with somebody else. And you just lost a second commission, didn't you?
sure again.
You guys have to understand.
Uh,
We all love the fact that they have to sign a buyer agency. But Nick, you understand that at the front door, you're trying to tell somebody to sign a buyer agency and you want 3% as a buyer agency and you want them to come in for 6 months. All they want to do is look at the house. You guys see the problems? The ones that know how to handle this, the ones that are Navy SEAL Team 6 good at this, they're going to get them signed. The ones that go, buyer's going to walk away, and the have-nots have got a new addition to their list. So let's talk about a couple things. Buyer agency agreements. When you get them signed, it's as important as a listing agreement. It's even more important, Aaron, because with a listing agreement, I put a sign in the front yard. I put a lockbox on the house. People recognize I have that listing. Real hard for the seller to say, I didn't know you had my house for sale when they walked by their for sale sign every day, right, Aaron?
Correct.
Buyer agency doesn't have that material good, does it, Aaron? So Aaron, I'm going to talk to you for a minute for the whole group. Can we do that?
Absolutely.
You ever sign a buyer agency agreement?
Myself,
Yeah, I mean, you ever had a buyer sign one with you?
maybe once.
Well, it's going to move on to someone else. Not that you're doing wrong, but I'm going to guess someone like Chris Gangon, Richard Berman, they've had them. Richard, let's go to you, Richard. How many buyer agencies have you signed in your career?
Every buyer since I got started.
Say, Richard's good. And Aaron, this is the thing we're going to do in the future. So I'm going to switch to Richard only because he has a little more experience. That's all. So Richard, when they sign a buyer agency, do you send them a copy of their agreement?
Yes.
Do you send it to him and her separately?
Yeah, I make them a copy at my office.
Do you also send it to you and your broker at the same time?
No, but
So
we're
no,
still-
guys, here's a sales hint. Whenever you ask a yes, no question, the answer is, you're about to get a derivative. of
No, I've never done that.
See, I've been married for a couple of decades, and when I said to my wife, hey, honey, you want to fool around later? She goes, I'm about to get some derivative of no. When you send a buyer agency to the buyer client, send it to yourself, send it to him, send it to her, and send it to your managing broker, all on the top line. See, up until Saturday, it was kind of laissez-faire with the buyer agency. Ain't laissez-faire no more. By sending it to yourself, him, her, if they're partners, both partners, and your managing broker. Richard, let's think about it. If you send it to yourself, Bob and Mary Smith separately, and your broker, would you have sent it to yourself and you got a copy?
Yeah.
Would your broker got a copy?
Yep.
Could the buyers argue they never got a copy?
No.
Because if you only sent it to one partner, they could say, I never got it, so it's not enforced. But if I send it to myself, him, her, and my broker on the top line, and I've been doing this, guys, for the last 12 years, no one in 12 years has tried to argue they didn't get a copy. It's their first escape clause that I never got a copy. And I know what Blake is thinking because he looks smarter than everybody else. I do DocuSign. I don't have to worry about that crap. Try to prove they got their DocuSign, Blake. Print out your darn DocuSign and send it again. Guys, unlike a listing, which has a sign and a lockbox, which there's proof you have it and the seller can't deny it, you have to prove you have a signed copy. It's gonna get ugly for the agents who don't treat this like it's more important than a listing agreement. Because when you get to the closing, Blake, can we talk for a second, Blake?
Yep.
And I bought $1 million house from you. What's your price point, Blake?
Probably 450, 550 here.
I buy $1 million house because I got a little extra coin. You happy selling me $1 million house?
Do I have to? No,
Are you happy selling me $1 million house?
absolutely.
And what is the commission rate you'd like to ask? Even though they're negotiable, guys, I'm not fixing anything. Rest the laws. So if you had a choice, what would be the commission that you would like to have on your buyer agency agreement?
3%.
So I agreed to 3%. The seller's contributing 2% because they offered a 2% concession, not on the MLS, but we found out through the grapevine that they offered a 2% that they're going to contribute. I'm short 1%, aren't I, Blake?
Yes.
Whoever has that noise in the background, could you please put it on mute? Thank you. So Blake, we get near the closing and I'm a dipshit buyer and I'm all happy. And I find out at the closing that you want $10,000 of my money for selling me a house because the seller only paid 2, not 3. I fight for $25 off a washing machine at Lowe's. How hard do you think I'm going to fight for $10,000?
Pretty hard.
I'm going to get an attorney because they're going to be on TV. Did you sign a buyer agency agreement? Are they asking you to bring money to closing? You might be owed compensation. And if you haven't got your duckies lined up, Blake, because they're going to say, I never got a copy of the buyer agent agreement. Why, Doc, you signed it. I didn't know. You guys see where I'm going with this? See, understand. We have sellers that have tried to screw us for years. And we never got screwed by the buyer because the seller was paying the fee. Now the buyer has to make up the difference between what they offered and Blake, what you want for compensation, huh?
Correct.
And if you're weak, you go, okay, I'll take 20. And if the buyer's strong, they'll come up with legal reasons why you should take 20. And I'm trying to show you how to protect yourselves. Does that make sense, guys? Send them copies. Underneath that, you should have a cover letter. Cover letter. The subject line has to have your buyer agent. Copies of your buyer broker agreement with your buyer agent, Blake Rule. See, it's real clear what this is, right, Blake?
Correct.
And make it bold. You guys hopefully saw the email I sent out. Was the letter a little bigger than normal? One, to get your attention. 2, I want you to read it. So I make my email cover letter a little bigger so you can read it, so you can't argue that I was hiding things. Dear Bob and Mary, attaches your buyer broker agreement making your buyer agent, Blake Rule, your buyer agent for your next purchase in, and Blake, what state do you work in?
South Carolina.
South Carolina. Because Blake, you're an agent in South Carolina. If you don't say South Carolina or whatever state you're in, the buyer will go, I didn't realize this covered outside of Manning. I thought I was only buying this part of South Carolina. And they get out of a buyer agency because they didn't know it covered this town, that town, this town. You got to keep it big scope. So, and then bullet form down. If you go to a new construction site, if you call or go visit an open house, if you go to a buy owner, if you chat online, name 10, 12 different bullet points of things they could do. Please let them know that Blake Rule is your exclusive buyer agent for your next purchase. Because they know you're well represented, they're more likely to give you better information. And your salutation ends, your buyer agent, Blake Rule. Every email you send that buyer client, the subject line has your buyer agent, Blake Rule. Every salutation on emails and text, your buyer agent, Blake Rule. Because here's a call I get periodically. Hi, Mr. Powers, this is Attorney Dipshit. How can I help you? Well, I represent Sydney Fullen, and there seems to be some confusion about representations. She doesn't think that you're her buyer agent. You're kind of demanding you get paid, and she found a house on her own without you. So it's probably best we just move on. Okay, buddy? Well, hold on a second, attorney dipshit. Here's the cover letter I sent them 2 months ago on a list of the home. Read the subject line. How many times does it say you're buyer agent? Here's 5 more emails. Read the subject line. Read the salutation. Here's 6 texts. Go ahead. Try to show me that she didn't know I was her buyer's agent. I'm getting paid. Have a good day. Let's talk about showing property. Let's go to Janet. Hi, Janet. Where you from, Janet? So people can send you referrals you deserve.
I'm in Florida,
You're in Georgia?
Orlando, Florida.
Oh my gosh. I'll be in Orlando, Florida in 2 weeks. Maybe we'll run into each other. It's not that big of a place.
Okay, let's go.
Let's go. So, are you going to show property to a buyer sometime in the future?
Yes, Sunday.
Commissions are negotiable, Janet, but what commission would you like to ask for?
I would say 3%.
3%. So, Janet, one of the things we have to do as agents is we have to let the buyers know that this house is offering this percent, this house is offering this percent, this offer no percent. We need to put in writing. So, Janet, what I would suggest you do, preferably by email, but text is fine. Steve, we're going to see 3 houses today. They all fit you and Bernadette's needs. Be aware that the first house, McCullen, is offering 2% towards your buyer agent commission. The house on Lopez is offering 2.4% towards your buyer's commission. And the house on Anderson has offered 3% of your buyer's commission. Now, did you guys hear what I said? Towards your buyer commission. I need you to write that word down. I didn't say that this seller is paying 2% because then I'm acknowledging I'm accepting 2%. This seller that we're going to see is willing to pay 2% towards your buyer agent commission. I've said this before, and Tim Laidler, who I love and adore, has heard this from me. It's not the elephants that kill us, it's the mosquitoes. When's the last time you heard of somebody dying from an elephant? But malaria kills millions of people. We need to let the buyer know before they go through the threshold how much this seller has offered towards the compensation. Because the buyer is going to say, well, I didn't know I had to pay any. I just picked this house. I let you know that this house was only paying 2% towards your buyer agency fee of 3%. See, full disclosure, right, guys?
Can I ask you a question?
You sure can if it's quick, and I like it. If you don't like it, it's slow. No, which one is it?
If I say on the buyer's broken agreement that is 2, and then that house is offering 3, I have to do a change and amendment, right?
Well, here's the problem, and that's a great question, Jeanette. If you're like most realtors, you take the 3, put it in your pocket, and laugh to the bank. Except that for line 2 of almost every buyer or broker agreement, do you know what line 2 says on almost every buyer broker agreement, Jeanette?
I don't remember.
Line 2 says act in the buyer's best interest at all times. It's going to be very difficult for you to convince this jury by accepting an extra 1% that you acted in the buyer's best interest.
Okay.
So if you write 2% down and the seller's offering 2.4, legally you're required to give that 2.4 to be used however they want to use it. Because if you accepted, you agreed to do the compensation for 2%, the seller is offering you 2.4, you have to let the buyer know what would you like to do because this is more than I contracted for.
Can I ask a question?
You sure can. Lemmy, is that how you say your name, Lemmy?
Yes.
That's such a cool name. I got Steve. Nobody remembers Steve, but if I was named Lemmy, no one would forget it. Lemmy, where are you from?
Connecticut.
Where?
Connecticut.
Oh, that's unfortunate. I was born in Hamden, Connecticut.
Oh, we're down by Old Saybrook area.
Oh my gosh, that's beautiful. What company are you with?
Century 21 All Points.
One of the finest companies in all North America. Guys, honestly, if you have an opportunity, work with an agent from C21 All Point. They know what they're doing. Lemmy, now that we both agree Connecticut is where I was born, and it's much better that I don't live there, what is your question?
So when you're saying, you let them know what the compensation is, what if you don't know?
Oh, isn't that your job?
Well, what if, say, you set up, if someone wants to see something in an hour, but you can't get a hold of the agent, how do you know what
That's
they're
your,
paying?
Lemmy, that's your job. And I'm gonna say this, Lemmy. Not knowing what the compensation is and showing the house to the buyer could be considered as not acting in the buyer's best interest at all times, yes?
Yes, okay.
And I'm telling you, this is the difference. Guys, this is why I couldn't sleep last night waiting for this call. Because the people that get this are gonna make all the money. And the ones that don't, and Lemmy, let's pretend that you don't, because you're really smarter than everyone else. But let's pretend you don't find out what the compensation is, and you show my listing.
Okay,
Steve,
yeah.
I'm writing a contract. What's the seller contributing? Oh, you're writing it? Yeah, they signed it. Yeah, I just got that one line to put in. Oh, it's zero.
Right.
I represent the seller. I'm not giving his money away or her money away.
Okay.
Lemmy, that was a great question. Do you guys hear the problems and the solutions we have?
Mm.
There is so much opportunity starting Saturday because our competition who's not paying attention to any of this is going to be walking around, ho-de-he. I got a key. I can show the house. It'll all work out. And they're going to get 1% at the closing. And the broker's like, you don't get any money. Great question, Lenny. Let them know prior to showing the property what the seller, if any, is willing to contribute. And Lemmy, to be clear, if it's unknown, you text the buyer or let them know in writing, guys, you don't know this, but I got a hairy ass and I need to cover it. And I'm going to text them, was unable to ascertain what, if any, this seller is willing to contribute towards your buyer agency fee. Because I take them through the threshold and they're offering zero and I didn't tell them, I could be not acting in their best interest because I should have said to them, if you decide to buy this home for 800 large, I need to let you know you're going to have to pay our company $24,000.
Steve, and you might have alluded to this already, but what I'm hearing from a lot of agents that are going to put zero in there, and they said, well, when the agent calls me to ask them about the compensation, I'm going to tell them it depends on what the offer is. What do you do? How do you advise your
Okay,
buyer?
say to me, it depends on what the offer is.
Well, Steve, my seller is going to look at the entirety of the offer before we decide, what we're going to comp you on.
Oh, help me out, Chris. Since we're both representing our own parties, you're representing a seller, I'm representing a buyer. What in writing did the seller write down instead of what you're telling me? Could you tell me exactly what the seller wrote down, what you have in writing?
No, that's confidential, Steve.
Well, no, it's not confidential.
Listing
The
agreements
seller
are
says I'm
confidential.
offering 2%. I need to know that. Did the seller put in writing to you that it's variable depending on the offer?
Steve, it's confidential, that agreement's between, the seller and our brokerage company.
All right, well, I'm going to text you that as per our conversation, the seller has agreed to participate depending on the happiness of the offer. I got it. Now I'm going to ask for 3. Because now it's a negotiable, yeah?
But once again, you have to text your buyer that, hey, they haven't specified what it is.
I'm going to text the buyer, talk to the agent, according to the agent. And I love Chris Gangone, guys, one of the finest agents in Nashville. He was being a regular listing agent here as opposed to the professional he is, because as a professional, he would never say, well, we're going to give what we're happy with because Chris isn't selling the house. But all agents say, well, we haven't decided what we're giving, like they own the house. As per the agent, they indicated, see the modifiers here, that the co-broke that they're willing to participate is negotiable depending if they like the offer. Let's write a strong offer so they cover your commission fee. You open that door. This is just being professional, guys. If you're not texting and emailing your agents, your buyers on every house, it's going to come back to bite you.
Yeah, that's.
And for those of you who've been in real estate like Carla for a little while, this is going to come back and bite a lot of agents who aren't thinking, right, Carla? And they're going to be selling houses with no pay. Because I have already figured out how not to pay buyer's agents on the deals in the future. which is a different topic and not for mass consumption. Okay? Got it?
I have one more question.
Go ahead.
So just to say, you explained to a buyer, that they would have to pay, and they say, you know what, we're not going to go with you. We're just going to go to the listing agent.
Well, that's your option. Let me ask you a question. Have you ever been or know anybody that ever been divorced?
Oh yeah.
So let's pretend you were getting divorced.
Hmm.
You had lots of money. And you didn't have an attorney, but your soon-to-be ex-husband had the world's greatest divorce attorney. How good are you going to do on that court date?
Right, not very well. Right, as my ex-husband did not do very well.
So if I could show you how by hiring me today, you'll actually make more money than by not hiring me, would you hire me today to help you buy a house?
Right, yes. Hmm.
Guys, this is a listing presentation, isn't it?
Yes.
Did I just close like I did on the listing presentation, Kelly? Welcome to August 17th, guys.
Steve, with that being said, with the mindset of a listing presentation, would it be wise to give them a net sheet for the buyers for every property?
Well, Aaron, I love you to death, but are you familiar with the number one?
Number one, no.
Are you familiar with what number one?
Yeah,
How many times do you think I've done a net sheet for a seller in the last 20 years?
thousands.
Are you familiar with the number one?
One time.
It's less than that.
Mm.
You give a net sheet to a buyer, how much it's going to cost, and it isn't to the dime. Guess who's paying the difference? Guys, it isn't like a seller where we have a house for sale that appears to be value. So Aaron, let's stick with you for a minute. If the house is on the market for 2 days and it should be at 900 and it's 850, is this thing going to have a lot of contracts? So how does a net sheet when they hired me reflect that they have to pay $925 for a house listed at 850?
Right.
You can't do it, guys. You're going to set yourself up. I'm telling you, the attorneys are salivating on buyer agent. The exposure for a buyer agent is so much higher than a listing because of line 2, act in the buyer's best interest at all times. You're going to try to convince 12 people who aren't smart enough to get out of jury duty that you're entitled to $10,000 more for opening a lockbox. Let me tell you, the people who don't pay attention to the seriousness of being a buyer agent are going to be getting carpal tunnel doing this, or not taking any money because it's better than getting sued. Because the buyers, if they're not done correctly, I mean, let's go to Carla, who I love and who's sold tons of houses. Honest to God, just hundreds and hundreds of houses. And some of them were really good POSs. I mean, $29,000 houses, right, Carla?
I specialize in POSs. My staff always says we only do the hard deals.
You ever get to a closing, Carla, and the buyer is complaining about a $28 bill
Yep.
and they fight you for an hour if you're going to pay it?
I try to avoid that.
But it happens, yeah?
Yeah.
Can you imagine how they're going to fight us over $16,000, $5,000, $3,000, guys? They're going to be quite shocked at the closing table when it has buyer agency fee difference and it's $4,200. And Carla, you live in a beautiful area. There's a lot of FHA in Memphis, is there not?
There's a lot of FHA.
I'm buying a house FHA. I'm putting 3% down. That's $7,500. Now Carla's telling me I've saved for 3 years to finally get a house, and I got to pay you $7,500. I ain't got the money.
We're going to get it from the seller.
And if the seller won't pay it,
No, I don't mean the commission.
well, yeah, but here's the problem: if you reduce the price $7,500, the buyer's still got to come up with $7,500 cash, don't they?
Yep.
Guys, this is. I could not get more excited. Could you guys notice that? This is when the professionals get all the business and the amateurs go, ha, ha, ha. These are things I've been thinking about. Gordon and I, Sydney, we want you to come to our event. If you're not coming to our event, shame on you. It's September 23rd, 24th. We are going to deal with this at a much deeper level because right now we got a big audience. We're going to deal with sellers and buyers and how to do this. This is the most fundamental shift in real estate. And those of us who aren't paying attention how to get a full commission if you decide to go for 3% are going to be selling themselves out of real estate. Oh, they'll make a lot of sales and they'll sell themselves right out of real estate. So I'm going to do a share screen here for a moment if I can. All right. Wow, that's not what I wanted to share. That's awful. Let's see. Well, I have us here somewhere. Well, let's go on. Matt Stars, are you on this call?
Yes, sir.
All righty. So Matt, what I want to talk about is what I call transaction cost. Now, I need everyone to write this down. You're staring at the screen like I just made it up. This is part of being a business. We are Watson Powers business coaches. This is part of the job. You have to take the total cost to be in real estate. Now, what is the total cost? Your car, your cell phone, the MLS fees, your lockbox, your photographer, your Facebook. I had to sign up for DigiSign to send some document that costs $35. It just never ends the cost of being in real estate. So you take the real cost of being in real estate. If you're a team leader, you should be paying down your building. That should be your hard cost. If you got a triple net lease, that's part of your hard cost. If you weren't in real estate and you worked for the government, all the costs to be in real estate. Well, I'd have to have a car. Yeah, but if you work for the government, you'd be driving a Kia, not a Mercedes SLS. All the lunches you go on and you claim, the Starbucks you have to have during your break. So Matt, let's use you because you are kind enough to be on this call. Matt, you live in what area so people can send you the referrals you deserve?
The South Bay of Los Angeles.
Could you speak up just a hair?
Yeah, sorry. Los Angeles.
So Matt, a little more expensive place to live.
Yep.
Your gas is how much a gallon?
Right around 4 now.
Good. I'm 310, but your prices are higher. So Matt, with your car cost, your MLS cost, everything it costs you to be in real estate, not shading the numbers, what does it cost you to be in real estate every year?
For me, about 80 grand.
80 grand. So let's go to Sydney Fullen, who I love and adore, who runs a small team, and she runs a team about 2 or 3 hours a day and then coaches for us. And we couldn't be happier. We call her the Bill Belichick of coaches. So if you ever get lucky enough to have her coach you, you're going to win lots of championships. Sydney, his is $8,000, $80,000 a year for your brick and mortar, all the costs, your CRM, your E&O insurance, your assistants, their dental, et cetera, et cetera. What does it cost you a year?
Right now, it's running me about 15 grand a month. Overall, roughly between $15,000 and $17,000 per month.
So if we look at Sydney's at 16 grand a month, 16 times 12 as near as makes no difference, $160,000, $170,000 a year. Now, Sydney, if you did 100 transactions, your cost per transaction is $1,700 a pop.
That's right.
But Matt doesn't do as many transactions as you and your wonderful team. Matt, how many transactions, because your hot price point is higher, how many transactions do you do a year?
Like 10 to 15.
So let's go with 12. What is 80,000 divided by 12?
A really bad straight sixes across the board.
You
6,600.
gotta speak up a little bit, Matt, and a little slower. We can't hear you.
6,600. 6,600.
So Matt's cost per transaction is 6,600. These are real numbers, guys. You have to know what your cost per transaction is. And if you're like most agents and most realtors, you overestimate your income and underestimate the cost of being in business. My lifestyle cost me $42,710 a month to run the Steve Powers life. I gotta cover 42,710 every month to break even. You wanna play big, you gotta spend big. I don't mean I'm driving a $200,000 car. I don't wear a $70,000 Rolex, because none of those gets me more business, but you might need that, okay? So let's look at a $500,000 sale, which is sort of an okay sale. If we look at $500,000, anybody know what $500,000 is at 3%?
15,000.
You're correct. So it's $15,000. So if we look at Matt, and now I have here on the average cost of being a real estate is a single agent about 2,500, a team is about 3,100. Gordon Watson, who's my partner, Watson Powers, we know how to run teams profitable. Anybody want to guess what Gordon's average transaction cost is? $1,200 per deal. We don't waste any money. It's all profit. But if we have a $500,000 sale, guys, what's the commission at that? 15 large. You guys see that? Somebody say yes, so I know my little cursor moving.
Yes, sir.
And if you're at 75%, you're, as a single agent, you make $11,250. Now, in Matt's case, he has $6,600 per deal. So he makes about $4,500 before taxes profit at a 3% co-broke. If he accepts a co-broke at 2.4, he don't get 15,000, he gets 12. And if he's at 75% split, he gets 9,000 minus the 6,600. He netted $2,400 to sell a house before taxes. And God forbid, Matt is dumb enough to take a 2% co-broke. The fee on a buck of 500 is 10,000. He's at 75% split. He gets 7,500. His net cost is 6,600. He made $900 pre-tax to sell a house. When I said earlier, if we don't learn how to ask for, get a buyer agency fee commensurate to what we think it's worth, and demand we get paid, we're going to sell ourselves right out of business, aren't we, guys? If you're a team, and again, these are all hypothetical numbers, so please bear with me. The team agent, again, if your split is 50-50 on a $15,000 commission, you get $7,500. If you as a buyer agent have a total cost of say $2,000 per transaction, you made $5,500. But if you accept a 2% co-broke, you get $3,000 profit pre-tax, $2,000 after. You sell 20 homes a year at $2,000, you made $40,000. That's less than you need to live, guys. This is why it's imperative that you train yourself, you train your teams to ask for a commission rate commensurate to services provided. Because here it is for the profit, 4,400, 1,900, 2,900, 1,900. Understand this mathematical formula, excuse me. A 3% to a 2.4% is a 20% drop in GCI. But in most cases, it's a 42% drop in profit.
Steve, this is Rich from Naples. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, Rich from Naples.
I got a quick question for you. Let's see. Let's say you have a neighbor and he says, Rich, I want to sell my house, but I'm going to sell it. I'm going to try it myself because I had two other realtors, 6 months. They didn't even bring me an offer.
Right.
And we know you, blah, blah, blah. And we're going to try to sell it ourselves for 2 months. And if we can't, then we'll give it to you. And then they say to me, in those 2 months, we know you have connections. Try to bring us a buyer, and we'll give you a percentage. I said, all right, fine. If I bring you a buyer, you give me 5%. And if I end up writing up both sides, then I'll only charge you 4%. They're like, okay, what about 3%? I said, okay.
So Rich, ready? I love the part till you started negotiating a commission for a non-contract that you have. So now you're defining what you want, so you can't get back in the show later. So Mr. Neighbor, who we like, if I bring you a buyer, you're willing to pay a commission that we're both happy with? Oh, absolutely. Good. Let me see if I can find you a buyer. Our normal companies are on 5%, but we'll figure that out. He goes, yeah, that's fine. I don't need to get into details, because what they say they'll do and what they do with an offer in front of them, Rich, are two different things.
Oh, so I had them sign right away the showing form.
Yep.
So, and tomorrow morning I'm showing it to a buyer that's coming there with an agent
Right.
from another broker.
Right.
And if they like the house, then, I already told that broker, if we make a deal, it's 2.5% each.
Right.
She said, okay, fine.
Good. And
Okay. And that's it. Now, what about if it was not a for sale by owner? What about if it was just someone that is listing it with me, right? And the other another agent brings the buyer, and
right.
that agent says to me, how much compensation are you paying out, right?
Well, here's the deal. Watch your language, Rich. We're not paying out compensation. The seller's agreeing to participate in the buyer agency fee. See,
Uh-huh.
you paying out a commission is what you can't say after August 17th. And by you texting that or emailing that to me as a buyer agent, I'm like, hey, we're about to get an extra 2% at the closing, because the guy's going to give us 2% or he's going to lose his license.
Oh, but wait a minute. I never said commission.
Oh,
I
you
said
did. You
compensation.
said we're giving out.
A compensation, correct.
The seller is willing to participate this amount. Those are the words. The seller's not paying. You're not paying. We're not paying. The seller has agreed to participate in a buyer agency fee of this amount. It ain't the elephants, guys. It's the mosquitoes. If you don't get the wording right, you're going to be paying lots of money.
So with that said, since I'm not representing the buyer, I don't need to have them sign a buyer broker form.
Right?
Right. Right.
Did the seller put in writing what they're agreeing to participate on an acceptable contract? Did you guys hear that? Seller agrees to participate in buyer agency fee of blank on an acceptable contract.
Right.
That gives the seller a little bit variation. Well, at this price, he's only willing to participate 1%. See, Rich, and I'm so glad you brought this up. You guys see the problem? This is not a cooperating situation anymore. It's a divorce, he versus she. And you have to represent your side. And if you don't do a great job to get them the house and write the paperwork correctly and get the buyer to understand there is a difference between what the seller's willing to participate with and what you've agreed to pay our company, not me, our company, then when you get to closing, if they weren't revealed that they owe you this much money, your company, you're not going to get it at the closing, right, Sydney? That's what's going to happen, guys.
Got a question.
Go ahead, Ray, 1 second. I can't stress this enough. You've got to understand your roles. It's not buddy-buddy. The seller is not participating unless it's in writing. The other agent is not giving you part of their commission. You've got to establish agency, buyer agency, what you're being paid, what services you're going to provide, and you need to disclose with each property what the seller is willing to participate in, so the buyer can know they may have to pay the difference if you can't put it in the contract. Yes, Ray.
Yeah, my question here is in California, our new listing agreement has zero mention of any numerical value for compensation for the buyer broker or concession. It's simply a checkbox. Yes, I'm open to it. No, I'm not open to it. Open to it can be $1 or it could be 10%, completely open. So when we're proceeding and showing buyers homes, we have obviously gone through, explained our services, explained what we charge for our services, and now we're beginning to show homes moving forward. It seems to me that if you go and you schedule the tours, you make your offers, you ask for what is in your agreement, that's it. I mean, I don't think the agents are going to be calling every other agent to find out what is there because there's nothing in writing. Now, smart agents might modify their contract and say, seller is willing to entertain this percentage if for a good contract. And those smart listing agents may share that with us. But the vast majority are not going to have anything. It's just going to be, well, it all comes down to what your offer is. So I wanted to get
Ray, it's uncharted territory, but I'm going to say this because I love you to death. I think the world of you. If you just start writing the contract where the buyer requests that the seller participate and pay 3% buyer agency fee, that's like saying I want the seller to pay 2% of my closing costs. I want the seller to replace the carpeting. If I'm up against 4 or 5 offers and I put in there that the seller agrees that this offer to pay a 3% participation fee, I've weakened my offer against another one that says they're not asking for any. Guys, this is all part of our skill set. We say to the buyer, do you want to put in here where the seller pays the 3? Yes. Let me tell you the risks. You're probably not going to get the house because they're offering 0 and there were 20 cards in the basket on day 1. So I believe you're going to have to agree to pay our company's fee in addition to the amount for you to get your offer accepted. Because we can always write offers that protect the buyer and don't pay anything, but doesn't mean the seller's going to take it. And this is where Babs with the glitter cleavage and essential oils is not going to make any sales anymore. Because as of Saturday, Babs is no longer able to come in and go, hi, we in the glitter cleavage want to show houses and the seller will pay our fee. Well, Babs, what are you going to do to get the price lower? What are you going to do to get my offer accepted? Why should I pay you, other than the glitter cleavage, why should I pay you $30,000 of a $1 million house to open the door? Which is the final point. We have to have a value proposition. This is more important for a real buyer. Now, Damien, we're not talking about some piece of crap buyer that leases up the end of December and they want to buy FHA and they want to go look at houses. We're talking about the buyer that needs $1 million house with 50% down and they want to buy within the next week. And Damien, they didn't get $1 million value house and $500,000 down by being stupid. And they're going to say to you, Damien, I'm interviewing Ray Stendel. Ray said he'd only charged me $20,000 to sell me a house. You're asking for 30. Show me why I should give you 10,000 more than Ray. And what's your answer, Damien?
Usually when those people are saying that, they're lying.
Well, who's those people?
Well, Steve,
the one you just mentioned.
Rich, I've done 4,500 homes. Right now, the world has changed. Before, you work with me, the seller will pay my fee. As of Saturday, I need to let you know legally that you're responsible if the seller won't participate to give me 30,000. Well, Ray Stendel said he only wants 20. So tell me why I should work with you. Why do I pay you 10,000 more for the same service? And we better have a value proposition that's worth $10,000 or they're going to go work with Ray and buy $1 million house.
That's because I'm going to negotiate really good for you and save you
Ray
even
said the
more
same
than that.
thing. Where's the 10,000, Rich?
Okay, then go. Get lost.
So you've lost 30,000. So guys, I wrote this down and
it.
I had a great conversation. One of the best coaching clients ever. They sell so much real estate. And we went through the beginning of this and they had some stuff really good. And I said, you don't have your objection handlers how to get hired. We have to be Navy SEAL Team 6 on these objection handlers. even more than a seller, because a seller is in their house and they have to pick somebody. Remember, the seller's going to meet with 3 idiots. We just got to be the best idiot.
Right.
But a
right.
buyer has to understand legally, if the seller won't pay your fee, they have to pay all or the difference. And it is monetarily huge. And with Carla, who does a lot of FHA, they don't have the $7,500 to pay her. So she has to show how she's going to get the $7,500. You have to have a value proposition that is so strong, SEAL Team 6 will be afraid to attack you. And if you don't, Rich, you'll say, go to hell. I'll go buy a house with Ray, and there's $20,000 gone of your money. Guys, there is so much abundance with buyers right now, if we know what to do. But if we put our head in the sand, we pretend I'll work it out later, we're going to sell houses at 2% and sell ourselves broke. Or we're not going to get hired at 3% and have no buyers. And the downside to no buyers, and Sydney knows this, is you're not putting new people in your community that have to sell in 7 years. You're not putting new people in your community that are increasing their sphere of influence that you can work for referrals. If all you're doing is sellers, they sell the house and they move out of state, and your referrals go with them. You've got to work on a proposition where when you get, here's the 5 reasons why you'll pay our company $30,000 as opposed to him at 20. If I can show you now, give you the evidence you need, 100% convince you, by allowing us to represent you, we're going to net you a lot more than $10,000 in service and in value. Will you hire me today? And I don't move forward till they say, what magical word, Nick?
Alfonso says. Yes,
Are you married, Nick?
I'm not.
If you were, your wife's name would be hypothetically?
Presley.
Presley. Oh, cool. Presley, is that a yes for you? I'm not moving forward till they both say yes. Because if Nick says, well, what do you got? That's an exit strategy. Maybe that's an exit strategy. Well, it depends. I'm not stepping one step forward till Nick says yes. And if he has a partner named Presley, Presley, is that a yes for you as well? When they both say yes, then I'm going to prove it to you. And you better be able to prove $10,000.
Hey,
Because
hey,
that's the
Steve.
question that's going to come down. Why should I pay you? There's a possibility I might have to pay you this much more than the other agent. Tell me what you do worth that. Now, Nick, what kind of car do you drive?
A C8 Corvette.
Nice. I read this morning the values of C8 Corvettes are plummeting.
Yeah, I've lost my butt.
But they're beautiful cars. If you were buying a Toyota Corolla LE, you're going to be comparing it to a Honda LE. And let me tell you guys, they're $100 apart in price. And the Honda people are trained how to sell a Honda over a Camry. And the Camry people are trained how to sell a Camry over a Honda. And the BMW dealers are trained how to sell a BMW over a Mercedes and a Jag and an Audi. And they know this because one of my clients used to be, they own a BMW dealership. They take all their salespeople, they fly them down to South Carolina, and all the Jags, Audis, and BMWs are there. And they say, show them this on the Lexus. The armrest is short. So when you say, I'm looking at a Lexus, yeah, check out the armrest. When you put your arm on there, it doesn't cover. Did you notice that? Yeah, one of the things about the BMW is you can sit back at $140. Arms are doing this. But the Lexus, did you notice? If you aren't learning how to beat your competition and get a full commission, well, you'll take the 2% and sell yourself out of business. You can't just get hired. We got to get paid a full commission. And we got to work on our value propositions. You got to be thinking, how do I prove I'm worth 2,000, 10,000, 15,000 more than my competition? Where does the buyer see that it's worth hiring you, Nick? Because when I say to you, well, Nick, I'm buying a $500,000 house. I got Kelly Nichols, I'm interviewing as well. She seems really nice, and I understand she gives out great gifts. Her company lets me do it at 2%, so that's 10,000. Your company wants 3%, that's 15. Nick, why should I pay you 5,000 more over Kelly?
Yeah, I got to build that value proposition. But if she's willing to drop her value, the first time that you're able to negotiate on how much you're going to make, and she's already willing to drop her.
Oh, she
value-
wasn't willing. Her company, they advertise, they do buyer agency at 2%. They're not
What's that?
discounting. That's their fixed fee.
Yeah, to be honest, I need to work. I need to work on my value proposition.
Because I read all reviews. They have 1,000 reviews at 4.8. Come on, Nick. Guys, do you see how much we have to learn? I'm gonna tell you, Sydney, I, and Gordon been working on this for months. We got the answers. Sign up for our event on September 23rd, 24th. We can intimately tell you. If you're in our coaching, we're working with you now on it. Guys, this is not to be taken lightly. This is not to be taken lightly. I showed you the difference between a 2% co-broke and a 3%. And if you're accepting the 2% co-brokes as a buyer agency fee, you'll be selling yourself right out of business. Because you can't make a living at 2% on the buyer side.
Steve, I want to bring,
Go ahead,
I want to
Tanya.
bring something up, and it is, and you know this already, but I just want to say it out loud. We're probably one of the few countries that don't have separate buyer and seller fees from our client. Like you could probably name some, and Italy is one of them. So what's the big deal?
Well, yeah,
Learn how to do it.
well, you have no choice.
Right.
Yeah, and
We
now we have no
take what-
choice, so.
We take
Just
what we
do it.
learned from today's call and realize, oh crap, I don't know what I'm doing. I just learned. I thought I had it, but I don't. Guys, there are millions of dollars available to us every year with this if we do it right. Because the ones who don't do it right are going to go broke.
Steve, can I ask you a quick question?
Go ahead, Damien.
Steve, so the time, you're absolutely right about most of this. I have a statement and a question.
But
The
what
time to
part
do
wasn't
it,
I right, Damien? You shoved that little word most of this, so it's kind of concerning. You know, my wife and I
Well-
reconnect on anniversary. Goes, most of that was pretty good. What the
most
hell
of it was
did I
pretty
miss?
good. Well, and maybe not that you were incorrect as much as just the timing of this situation. So yeah, we certainly have to have a value proposition. We have to know how to differentiate ourselves. But the time to do that is at the timing of the buyer consultation, which is consummated with the buyer agency agreement, right? So if you're doing that the right way at the right time, when you get to the actual contract for purchase, it's already done, right?
If you
So-
do the things we talked about today, where you text them and say, there's the 3 properties, here's the compensation with each, so they know when you're sitting down with the contract, what each property they may have to pay if we don't negotiate it. Right. And Damien, here's why we're talking about it. Sometimes I have to do this in 10 minutes in front of a house, don't I?
But I think I want to argue with you about that point.
Go ahead.
First of all, you may have to do it at the house, but you have to do it before you go in. So lately, I don't want to know what the seller concessions might be, because if I prep my client properly, and my number is 2.7, 3 would be great, but I'm pretty good with 2.7, and I don't care if the seller's paying 2, because part of my value proposition is that I'm going to get 2.7, and if the seller only pays 2, then you, Mr. Buyer, are going to have to give me 0.7. But I'm going to do what I can to get all of that rolled into the cost. So when I present the offer, and to me, it's part of my value proposition. When I present the offer, I'm going to have a conversation with the seller's agent to do what I can to ensure that the seller is going to look at net.
Hey, Damien.
Yeah.
Where do you work?
What's that?
Where do you work? Somebody give you referrals?
St. Louis, Missouri.
I love St. Louis. One of my best realtor friends is in St. Louis, so it's a great place. So Damien, have you ever sold one of my houses?
No.
Kelly knows the market I used to work in. Kelly will not. you write a contract, I don't talk to you. I only talk to the agent whose offer is gonna get accepted. You'll never talk to me. Your offer stands alone. I'm not talking. I got 10 offers on the table. I'm not talking to all 10 agents. I sold 200, 300, 400 homes a year. I got time to talk to agents and hear their story. I appreciate the effort and you're acting in your buyer's best interest. In that situation where the agent can talk to you, you can talk to them. But when there's 10 contracts on the table and you're asking for 2.7 and the seller's offering 2, and you ask for 2.7, you may not get your offer accepted because of what you're asking for.
And I understand that. I mean, I understand, but to me, in my experience, I do talk to the listing agent.
Because you're in St. Louis, they're nicer in St. Louis.
I doubt that, but at least, but I
So
also
guys,
know
you
that.
see the issues we have here? We have to decide, we have to be malleable. We have to
Right.
play the game that we're in with each house, each offer, each agent, because there is no simple answer. But the answer is, if we're not asking for just compensation, in case of Damien's 2.7, and we're accepting less compensation, we're going to be out of business. I think we all agree to that. And we have to explain to the buyers that the difference between what the seller is agreeing to contribute and what you agreed to pay our company is this amount. And they need to know that many times throughout the transaction. So at the closing, they don't say, Sydney, we don't have the 4,200 to pay your company. So if you're willing to take 4,200 less, we can buy this house. But if not, I guess we can't buy because you want all your money. You're not happy with 12,000, you want 16. And then the seller's like, this is a problem between you and the buyer. Close on my damn house. And your company is going to bend on that 4,200 because the buyer is somehow able to do that. This is what happens, guys. When the buyer doesn't want to pay or doesn't believe they need to pay the difference, if we don't cover how to do it and they act surprised because you're greedy and they don't want to pay you the difference. Legally, they owe it to you. But I swear to God, you're sitting at a closing and Sydney's been at thousands of these and you're between a rock and a hard place. Demand my money, no closing, get sued by everybody. Give up my
Steve,
money.
can I?
We
If
have a
you wait-
closing and I'm broke. Yes, Karen.
So, hi, Karen from Connecticut here.
Hi, Karen from Connecticut.
Hi, Hamden, Connecticut, actually.
Hamden, I was born on Thompson Street,
I
right
heard
off
you say
Dixville
that.
Avenue.
Oh, really? So, okay. So, but you're no longer in Hamden, I guess, right?
No, ma'am.
Okay, so I have a question for you. So in our local MLS, I received notice yesterday or the day before that as of Friday, they will no longer be listing any buyer brokerage commission percentage in the MLS anywhere. And you're saying that you don't think it's a good idea to write in the contract seller to pay the buyer brokerage commission.
I didn't say that. I didn't say it's not a good idea to write.
But it can cause a problem with the deal because if the seller's got 5, which is happening, 5 or 6 offers,
It doesn't cause a
and they see
problem.
that.
Again, when I'm writing the contract, I have to have a package where my package is better than the other 4 contracts.
Understood.
If I ask for the seller to give early possession for 2 months and hold 5% financing, I'm probably not going to get it accepted. If I ask the seller to pay a 3% co-broke fee in buyer's behalf, and I've got 7 other contracts on it, it may not get accepted. This is just part of negotiation.
So that to me makes perfect sense. So I guess my question is for especially with more younger or first time home buyers, because we don't know, let's say we haven't been able to get a hold, the agent's not returning our calls, we're the listing agent, and our buyer, there's a shit ton of offers in on this property, and you write the offer up and you don't put that in the contract, but your buyer realistically doesn't have that $4,200 to pay.
Then why are you working with them, Karen? Because they can't buy a house and pay you.
Well, so this is my question. Do you say to the buyer when you're first sitting down with them, look, the seller typically pays the commission, but you need to be prepared that if they don't, you're going to have to make up the difference.
Yeah.
Well, what if they're going along through this whole process and they're approved for the mortgage and everything is great? What do I have to sue them in court afterward to get the money out of them if there
So
just
Karen,
isn't
let's
money?
just use this hypothetical and then we'll end this call. So Karen,
Okay,
when you work with a buyer that's getting $20,000 from their parents, do they get a gift letter?
yes,
Do you demand to get the gift letter to make sure it's valid before you take them out and show them houses?
yes,
So if they don't have the $7,000, the difference to pay, and they say, my parents will get it, perfect. Let's get a gift letter from them so there's no problem with the closing. Now I got a gift letter from the parents saying that if need be, they'll pay the rest of my commission. Guys, this is how this works.
so what if they've saved, $65,000 for a down payment and they're putting 50,000 down and they're keeping 15 for closing costs and everything's going along and you get to the closing and there is a discrepancy and they just don't have it. I'm just curious, do you have any idea what happens? Have you gotten to?
Yeah, here's the deal, Karen.
Maybe you.
When I send you the contract, congratulations, the offer that you wrote has been accepted. More details tomorrow. Tonight, go have a glass of wine and celebrate. I'm not dealing negative on day one. The next day, here's your contract. As you know, the sellers agreed to participate 2% of the 3%. So at the closing, you'll need to have an additional 8,200 for our company commission. Other than that, we're good to go. I'm putting it in writing the day after the contract's ratified. I told them when we were writing the contract, but I want to make sure I reduce it to writing on the day after the contract's accepted. And then I can make sure, hey, your HUD statement's coming. You're going to have a termite inspection. You're going to have to change your water. There's a commission adjustment fee you'll have to take care of. I'm going to make sure throughout the transaction that they were aware of it. Now, sometimes people are going to go to the closing with zero money to pay the compensation because they want to pull it on you. Yes?
Yes, that's what my question to you is.
This ain't my first rodeo. It's called a promissory note. You agree to give our company $200 a month for the next 60 months interest free. I'm going to get paid.
I don't.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you.
Guys, if you're not good at negotiating, if you're not qualified to help a buyer get through this deal, you're going to sell yourself right out of real estate. You're going to get the closing and not get paid. You're going to accept a lesser commission. And in some cases, if you take a 2% co-broker on a $300,000 house, and the company says, well, we have a $500 transaction fee and we demand our money, you're going to literally work for a company that's not going to give you any money because you didn't cover the company's nut. Right, Cindy? And you're going to be out of real estate. Guys, this is Watson Powers business coaching, not realtor training. We aren't doing transactions for free and we'll make it up later. This is a business. I can't sell a steak for less than I pay for it. Guys,
I don't even understand how you get to a closing table with something not known. I mean, do people really do that? Do you get to a closing table and not know that they have financing or that they haven't?
well, what her argument is they had a bunch of money, but they thought they had the difference, but now they don't. So they want you to cover it. This is going to happen all the time, Damian, because up to this point, the seller paid our fee. So it wasn't a big deal. But now if the seller is only paying 1% and you wanted 3% and you bought a $500,000 house, I need $10,000 from them. And they don't got it. And the choice is close or not close. And God forbid the seller side is a protected class. Now we're in bigger trouble. That's an agreement between you and the buyer. You buy my house, you get paid later. You got to deal with this stuff, guys. I don't want to go down the negatives. So let's hit this back. Number one, when you sign a buyer agency, send them copies of their contracts to yourself, him, her, and your manager or broker so they can't argue they didn't get it. On all your emails, your texts, you put your buyer agent, sincerely your buyer agent, so they can't argue they didn't know you had a buyer agency. When you're showing property, it's in your best interest to let them know that this seller has indicated they're willing to participate this much on this house, this much. Let them know prior to stepping through the threshold that our fee, and it's negotiable, is 3%. This seller is willing to pay too, so you'll need to make up the difference if the seller won't pay it. It's called disclosure. If you don't disclose, you won't get it. Number 3, we talked about the difference of the transaction cost versus 2.5, and 3%. You guys see the difference? If you take less, you're gonna go broke. And number 4, you better come up with garlic strong value propositions, because the buyers are going to say to you, why should I pay you this much more dollars? Because it's real clear now between you and them. And I'd like your answer, Nick, if they're willing to drop blah, 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 but it's really a dollar figure now. With a seller, 6 versus 5, not a big deal. In the future, it's 3 versus 2, Nick. It's a third more. No 6 versus 5, I'm giving away 2, keeping 3. It's 3 versus 2. Third, Nick. I can't give away 2 and still keep 3. I'm only getting 2. But with the buyer side, we better prove if they're a real buyer, we want to work with them. What are 1, 2, 10 reasons to hire you? What are your statistics? What can you prove to me that I want to buy from you, not Damien? Because Nick, you want 3%, Damien wants 2.7. He thinks that's fair. We're buying $1 million house. The difference seems to be small, but it's $3,000 more, Nick. Damien seems like a smart guy. Why should we pay you $3,000 more to open the house? And you better have some answers. And if you think 3,000 is hard to cover, try covering 10. So did you guys learn some stuff today? Get a little scared? It was not my intention to scare anybody. If you can't feel it, I am so excited about the changes on Saturday. The people that we're coaching are going to have all this. We're going to make them Navy SEAL Team 6. And their agents are going to get 3% if that's what you choose, because commissions are negotiable. And if you don't pay attention, you're going to see a lot of agents do 1% deals because that's all they're worth. So, Blake, does Mercedes-Benz charge $140,000 for a car?
Sounds about right.
Do they apologize, or do they make a car worth $140,000?
They make it worth it.
Don't apologize for your fee, guys. Make it worth it, yes? Go to watsonpowers.com, sign up for our event, free food. We give you breakfast and lunch. The lunch is fantastic. I know, because last year, for 2 days of lunch, we spent $21,000 to feed 75 people. So it's not cheap food. We're not giving you a Subway sandwich. Come out and see us. Carla, you come out. I want to see you. All right, guys? Everybody knows my number. If not, look up Watson Powers, call me. I'm here to help anybody, anytime. Let's go put those people who don't know what they're doing under the ground, and let's go make all the money. Thanks for watching, guys.